There is a voice in your head that never seems to stop. It narrates your day, questions your every move, replays the past, and predicts the worst possible future. It talks when you wake up and keeps talking as you try to fall asleep. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's cruel, but always it's loud. And for most people, this voice becomes so familiar, they mistake it for who they are. But what if that voice is not your true self? What if you've spent your entire life listening to a noise that was never meant to lead? You were not born thinking like this. You learned it. And somewhere along the way, thinking went from being a helpful function to becoming a tyrant. The mind, once a tool, has become the master. It questions your worth, your path, your decisions, and you follow, not because it's right, but because it's loud. In ancient traditions, especially in monastic life, this problem has long been understood. Monks do not aim to destroy the mind. They aim to observe it, to use it only when needed, and to place it back down when it begins to control them. They understand something most people have forgotten. The mind is a powerful servant, but a dangerous master. And in a world obsessed with overthinking, the greatest act of wisdom may simply be this: think less. Before we go deeper, take a moment to type this in the comments. I clear my mind. That phrase alone can begin to create space between you and the voice that never stops. If you find this message meaningful, like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us bring these teachings to more people who are searching for inner peace in a noisy world. Overthinking is not just a modern problem, it is a modern epidemic. We've built a world where speed is rewarded, answers are demanded instantly, and stillness is treated like laziness. People wear their mental exhaustion like a badge of honor. They say things like, "I can't shut my brain off," or "I just think too much," as if it's a fixed part of who they are. But it's not. Thinking is a behavior, and like any behavior, it can be changed. The first shift begins with understanding that your thoughts are not facts. They are not commands. They are not even always yours. Thoughts arise from memories, fears, programming, the media you consume, and voices from your past. They appear like clouds in the sky, some bright, some stormy, but none of them are the sky itself. You are not the thought. You are the awareness underneath. If you've ever caught yourself spiraling, worrying about what someone might think, rehearsing a conversation, replaying a mistake from years ago, you've felt the grip of the mind when left unobserved. It creates a loop that feels urgent, even when it isn't. And that loop steals your energy, your clarity, and your ability to experience the present moment. Monks call this the monkey mind, restless, reactive, and always jumping from one branch to another. The mind was never meant to be running non-stop. Its true power lies in precision, not noise. When you need it, the mind can solve problems, create art, build bridges, design futures. But when it's always on, it starts to cannibalize itself. Overthinking doesn't lead to better thinking. It leads to confusion, fear, and paralysis. The mind, like a blade, must rest in its sheath when not in use. Otherwise it dulls, and a dull blade can harm more than it helps. So how do you begin to reclaim authority over your own mind? Start by noticing. Notice when thoughts arise. Notice what triggers them. Notice how often they repeat. You don't need to fix or fight them. Just observe. When a thought says, "This isn't going to work," don't argue with it. Just say, "That's a thought." That small act of recognition begins to separate you from the voice inside. Next, bring your attention to your body. The mind lives in words. The body lives in truth. While the mind may say you're in danger, the body might be calm. While the mind panics, the breath may remain steady. When you connect with the breath, you anchor yourself in the present moment, something the mind alone cannot do. Try this. Whenever your thoughts feel overwhelming, pause and take one full breath, then take another. Don't try to change anything, just feel the inhale and the exhale. That is reality, that is now. The more you practice observing your thoughts, the more you'll begin to see patterns. The mind tends to follow grooves, repeating the same kinds of worries, judgments, and predictions. And because you've believed those thoughts for so long, they feel real. But familiarity is not truth. You may have 100 thoughts a day that say, "I'm not good enough," and none of them are true. They're just familiar. They've been rehearsed, and what's been rehearsed can be rewritten. There is immense freedom in realizing that not every thought deserves your attention. Just because a thought arises doesn't mean it should lead. You don't need to follow every mental thread. You don't need to explore every worry. You don't need to solve every hypothetical scenario your brain invents. Let some thoughts pass without grabbing them. Let them dissolve without giving them weight. That is not avoidance. It's mastery. As you strengthen this ability, something subtle begins to shift. A space opens up between stimulus and response. Someone says something sharp, and instead of reacting, you breathe. A memory surfaces, and instead of spiraling, you witness. You stop being pulled by every mental tide. You become rooted, like a mountain beneath the clouds. The thoughts may come and go, but you remain grounded. This is the heart of monk wisdom. Not the absence of thought, but the ability to choose when to think and when to simply be. Imagine waking up and not immediately checking your phone. Imagine facing a challenge and not rushing to fix it with logic, but instead meeting it with calm presence. Imagine listening without rehearsing your response. Imagine resting, not because everything is done, but because your peace no longer depends on completion. To live like this, you don't need a robe or a monastery. You need only intention. A commitment to relate to your mind differently, to stop worshipping thought as truth, to stop believing that every answer must come from thinking harder. Many of the most important realizations in life do not come from thought. They rise in silence. They emerge in stillness. They arrive when you've stopped trying to force them into being. Stillness is not passive. It is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of depth. In a world where attention is constantly being pulled outward, stillness is an act of defiance. It is a return to the inner world, where clarity lives. And the mind, when allowed to settle, becomes like a calm lake, reflecting truth without distortion. But a restless mind is like a stormy sea. Nothing can be seen clearly until the winds die down. If you've ever had a moment of profound clarity while walking in nature, or sitting in silence, or simply being fully present, then you've already touched the place beyond thought. That clarity didn't come from analyzing. It came from presence. It came from not thinking harder, but from thinking less. The world tries to convince us that more information equals better decisions. But monks know that the best decisions often come from inner alignment, not external data. Monks live simple lives, not because they lack ambition, but because they understand that complexity feeds chaos. When your environment is noisy, your mind becomes noisy. When your schedule is overflowing, your thoughts begin to race. Stillness begins with subtraction, fewer inputs, fewer distractions, less urgency, more presence, more attention, more space. Simplicity is not emptiness, it is clarity. In your own life, this can be practiced through small acts. Waking up without immediately reaching for your phone. Eating without watching or listening to anything. Taking a walk without headphones. These moments may feel unproductive at first, but they're actually deeply powerful. Because in those moments, you're teaching your mind to be still again. You're training your nervous system to feel safe without constant stimulation. You're reclaiming control over what you allow in. And once you reduce the noise, something else happens. You begin to hear the deeper voice, the quiet one beneath the clutter. This voice doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It speaks in feelings, in knowing, in subtle nudges. Some call it intuition. Others call it the higher self. It is not born of logic, but of presence. And it cannot be heard over the roar of constant thinking. To access it, you must be willing to slow down, to get quiet, to listen. Meditation in this context is not a spiritual hobby. It's a tool for sharpening awareness. It's a way to separate yourself from the constant motion of the mind and observe it from a place of stillness. You don't meditate to escape thought. You meditate to see it clearly. Even a few minutes a day of sitting in silence, observing your breath, and watching your thoughts like clouds can begin to rewire your relationship with thinking. You may notice resistance when you try to sit in silence. The mind will say, "This is boring," or "You're wasting time," or "This won't help." These are just more thoughts. Let them come, let them pass. Don't argue with them, don't obey them. Just observe. Eventually, the mind gets quieter, not because you silenced it by force, but because you stopped feeding it your attention. This is not about eliminating thought. That's not realistic and it's not necessary. It's about creating space around your thoughts so they don't consume you. It's about using thought when it serves you and setting it down when it doesn't. Like picking up a tool when you need it and placing it back on the shelf when the work is done. That's what monks mean when they say, "Think less." It's not a command, it's a permission slip. Modern life glorifies the busy mind, but the most powerful people are not those who think the most. They are the ones who can think clearly, act decisively, and rest deeply. Thinking less doesn't mean knowing less. It means knowing what matters. It means trusting that some answers rise in silence, not from the noise of mental chatter. This principle also applies to creativity and problem solving. Many people believe they need to push through blocks with more effort, but often stepping back creates space for a new idea to emerge. Some of the greatest inventions, insights, and breakthroughs didn't come during mental struggle. They came during a walk, a shower, a moment of stillness. Because when the mind rests, the deeper intelligence surfaces. If you look back at moments of your life when clarity arrived, really arrived, it probably wasn't in the middle of frantic analysis. It was in the pause, the deep breath before the decision, the silence after a storm of doubt, the moment you stopped thinking and simply knew. These are the moments that shape us, and they are almost always quiet. In daily life, one of the best ways to access this stillness is through breath. The breath is always present, always honest, always available. When your mind is racing, come back to the breath. Inhale slowly, exhale gently. Feel the air enter your nose, fill your lungs, and leave your body. Do this without needing to fix or control anything. Just observe. This is your anchor. The breath brings you back to now, and now is where peace lives. Over time, thinking less becomes your default. Not because you've stopped thinking, but because you've stopped identifying with every thought. You've stopped letting them dictate your mood, your worth, your direction. You begin to live from awareness, not reactivity. And that shift changes everything. Let this idea take root. You are not the noise in your head. You are the one who hears it. The observer, the witness, the calm presence underneath the chaos. And the more you return to that awareness, the more natural it becomes. Peace is not something you earn through effort, it's something you remember through stillness. The shift from overthinking to presence is not instant. It is built through consistent conscious practice. Every time you choose to pause instead of react, you strengthen the muscle of awareness. Every time you choose to return to your breath instead of diving into mental chaos, you reclaim power from your thoughts. Slowly, the space between stimulus and response grows wider, and in that space, you discover freedom. There are simple ways to integrate this practice into your daily life. Begin by choosing moments that already exist, transitional moments. When you wake up before checking your phone, sit up in bed and take 3 slow breaths. When you're waiting in line instead of scrolling, bring your attention to your feet on the ground. When you're walking, notice the rhythm of your steps. These are small choices, but they reshape your inner world. They remind the mind that it is not the center of everything. It is a guest, not the host. It's also important to change the way you talk about your mind. Language reinforces identity. Instead of saying, "I'm an overthinker," try, "I'm learning to be more present." Instead of saying, "I can't turn my brain off," say, "I'm learning to quiet the noise." These small shifts in language create new grooves in your consciousness. You stop reinforcing the problem and begin aligning with the solution. Identity is fluid, and what you speak, you become. Surround yourself with environments that support stillness. If your space is filled with clutter, noise, or constant digital stimulation, your mind will mirror that. Clear one corner of your home. Light a candle. Keep a simple object, like a stone or wooden bead, that reminds you to slow down. These external cues help create internal spaciousness, and with repetition, they become anchors that bring you back to presence without effort. You can also use short mantras to ground yourself in the moment. These are not magical phrases. They are reminders to the nervous system that you are safe. Say quietly to yourself, "I am here," or "I am the witness," or "This moment is enough." Say it when you feel overwhelmed. Say it before sleep. Say it when your thoughts begin to spin stories that feel urgent but are not true. These words act like stepping stones across a rushing river. They bring you back to solid ground. When you begin to think less, you may notice something surprising. Your energy returns. Not just physical energy, but emotional clarity. When the mind is not in a constant loop, your body can rest, your heart can open, your decisions become cleaner, more intentional. You begin to act from truth, not fear, from vision, not noise. This is the difference between living and reacting, between existing and being awake. People often think that thinking less will make them passive, but the opposite is true. When your mind is calm, your actions become sharper. You speak with intention. You move with clarity. You respond with wisdom. You stop doing 10 things to avoid the one thing that matters. You stop overcomplicating simple choices. You stop filling silence just to feel safe. Instead, you begin to trust stillness as your most powerful state. Let this truth settle in. Peace is not found in solving everything. It's found in needing to solve less. When your inner world becomes quiet, your outer world stops feeling so overwhelming. Problems lose their urgency. Conversations feel lighter. You no longer need to manage every outcome. You simply meet life with awareness, and that is more than enough. This kind of living is not reserved for monks or mystics. It is available to you right now. It does not require escaping your life. It requires returning to it fully. without the constant mental filter, without the noise that distorts every experience. Just you, here, now, present, breathing, alive. So, as you move forward from this moment, ask yourself often, is this thought useful? Is it true? Is it mine? And if not, let it go. You don't need to fix every thought. You don't need to respond to every mental story. Some thoughts are just echoes. Let them fade. You're allowed to choose silence over noise, presence over performance, stillness over stress. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. And that awareness, calm, steady, unshakable, is your greatest source of strength. It is not found through effort. It is remembered through stillness. And the more you return to it, the more natural it feels. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop needing to control everything. You simply show up with presence, with peace, with power. So let this be your new mantra. I am not my thoughts. I am the one who sees them. When you live from that place, the mind becomes what it was always meant to be, a tool in your hand, not a voice in your head. You use it when needed. You put it down when it's not. And in that simplicity, you find everything you were chasing through overthinking. If this message brought you any sense of calm, clarity, or insight, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps this work reach others who are ready to hear it. And in the comments, type this phrase to anchor your shift. I clear my mind. Let's fill the space below with presence, not noise.